Alright, so today you guys worked on a coordinate plane worksheet during class and you were plotting points. And so today your substitute should have passed this paper out to you. If they didn't, just go ahead and copy it into your notebook. If they did, however, I want you guys to take notes on this for today, and then we're going to start using this format for our notes, and I'll explain more about it tomorrow. But our DLO for today is I will learn about slope. And you can go ahead and put your name on it. I definitely want you to put the date on here, so go ahead and fill in today's date. And we're going to start this new concept where we're going to be talking about an essential question. So what's going to happen is we're going to write an essential question here in this box, and then the blank space over here to the right will be used for tomorrow, and you're going to answer that essential question. So don't write anything in the box to the right, but right here in the box to the left, I want you to go ahead and write down this essential question. So find the slope of the line connecting the points ten, 4 and -3, -2. Alright, so our essential question, find the slope of the line connecting the points 10, 4 and -3, -2. Like I said, write it in that box, leave the space over there blank for right now. So we have 3 vocabulary words we're going to look at today. So we're going to look at the word coordinates. What are coordinates? I think that's how you spell it. Forgive me if I'm wrong. We're going to look at the word graph. Actually, let me fix that. We're going to look at the word coordinate plane. Which is kind of like a graph, so you can put a graph in parentheses. But we're going to call it a coordinate plane, and we're going to look at the definition of the word slope. So to give ourselves a brief definition, because we don't have a ton of room over here, but to give ourselves a brief definition, coordinates are a set of values that show an exact position. So go ahead and write that in here. A set of values that show an exact position. And we're going to talk about what that means a little bit more in just a minute. But go ahead and write that down for right now. So a set of values that show an exact position. So for example, if you have the coordinate 10, 4 up above, like what does that mean? Where do you plot that point? So hopefully you guys got a little bit of that today. But if not, alright, let's talk about this definition of the word graph. So a graph, or in other words, a coordinate plane, is the following. So you guys can go ahead and write down this definition for coordinate plane. It's the plane containing the x-axis and y-axis. So when you hear me say coordinate plane, I'm talking about the picture that we create when we put an x-axis and a y-axis together. And then last but not least, this last vocab word I want to look at is the definition of the word slope. And so the definition of the word slope is essentially how steep or how flat a line is. So how steep or flat a line is. So go ahead and write that down. And if you need a minute to pause the video, go ahead and do that. But I have to move the thing down. So when we look at this, if we move it down, then we can see down here that you have a notes section. And then down at the very bottom, you're going to have a summary. So you're actually not going to fill in the summary today either, so wait until tomorrow for that. Don't fill in this blank box until tomorrow either. So right now we're just going to be writing in the notes section. Now you don't have to take up the whole thing because we're going to be taking a few more notes tomorrow as well. So write however you need to write, but we're going to just look at a few examples so that we can figure out how to find the slope of a line, or how to find the slope between two coordinates. So first of all, we talked up above, it says slope was the steepness or flatness of a line, and so here's how you find the slope. So for slope, you might have heard it as something called rise over run. So rise over run. Or when I think of this, I like to think of it as vertical over horizontal. Or to see it in picture form, you might see it like this. This is a vertical line over a horizontal line. And the direction on this matters, so it matters if you're going positive or negative, so make sure to pay attention to that. Now there's a couple things we need to remember before we continue. So let's just make a few notes about positives and negatives. So I'm just going to put note. Here, let me make this a different color. So here's a little note. Actually, I know I keep doing this to you guys, but I'm going to leave a little bit extra room. Note. So here we go. If you have a positive divided by a positive, so if the rise and the run are both positive, your answer is going to be positive. If you have a positive divided by a negative, you're going to have a negative answer. If you have a negative divided by a positive, you're going to have a negative answer. And if you have a negative divided by a negative, you will also have a positive answer. So these are just little rules we need to remember. So there's 4 of them. So make sure you write those 4 down. I'll separate them by little red commas. So there's 1 rule, 2 rules, 3 rules, and 4 rules. So make sure you write those 4 rules down. So positive divided by positive is positive, positive by negative, and negative by positive are both negative, and a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So there's just a little note that's going to help us out. So, what else do we need to know? You guys need to know what the definition of slope is. So this one is really important. So we're going to put a big old star and highlight this if you guys have a highlighter. So slope equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So that's the rise over the run, because the y-axis is the vertical axis, it goes up and down, and the x-axis is the horizontal axis, it goes left and right. So the vertical is the rise and the horizontal is the run. And we see this when we have a pair of coordinates, like for example, coordinates, like in the example we're about to do, you'll see something like 5, negative 2. And that would be x1, y1. And you might have something like 3, negative 1. And that would be x2, y2. So x always comes first and y always comes second. It's alphabetical. And we can do an example together over here. So we'll have, well, first of all, let's put a big old highlighter on this because this is really, really important. So go ahead and highlight that, put a big old box. You're going to need to know that for sure. So if we do an example, and we'll do an example with the coordinates we just used up there, if I want to find the slope, so find the slope between 5, negative 2 and 3, negative 1, then let's see. We have that equation for slope that we just looked at. It says slope. Oh, and one more thing. Let's see, I'll write it right here actually. And I'll write it in red because this is really important. make sure you include that, what I just wrote up there in red, where it says equals m. When we talk about slope, they usually use the variable m. So whenever you see it written as an m, you're going to know that that's slope. So I'm going to write m equals, and we know that that's slope equals. Up here it says y2 minus y1. So if I look over here, here's y2 and here's y1. So if I'm going to do y2 minus y1, I have negative 1 minus a negative 2. Alright, that's y2 minus y1. And then on the bottom, I have x2 minus x1. So if I'm looking for x2 and x1, here's x2 and here's x1. So when I write that, I write 3 minus 5. Now, just as a quick little side note, it doesn't matter which one you put first. Like I could have put 5 minus 3, but if you do that, then you have to switch the ones on the top as well. So if you're going to start with one coordinate and go to the other one, you always have to do the start from the first one again and go to the second one. So I chose to go from the second to the first, and I chose my second values minus my first values. But if you're going to do it the other way, just make sure you switch both on top and bottom so you keep them together. So if we look at this, we have negative 1 minus a negative 2, and I remember that a negative times a negative is a positive, so this becomes a positive 2. So negative 1 plus 2, those are different signs, so I have to subtract my answers. And then I keep the sign of the bigger number, and 2 is bigger and it's positive, so I'm going to keep it as positive 1. And then 3 minus 5 on the bottom, those are different signs. The 3 is positive, the 5 is negative. So I'm going to subtract those numbers, that'll be 2. And I keep the sign of the bigger number, and 5 is bigger than 3, so I keep it as negative. So if we look back up here again at my little note, I see note that a positive divided by a negative is a negative answer. So up here I use this one. Alright, so that's where I'm getting this. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. So my final answer is that my slope, and I'll write it over here, m, because that's slope, equals negative 1/2. Alright, and I'll put a box around that. And that's all we're going to get to for today's notes, and we'll look at it again a little bit tomorrow. But go ahead and finish that up. That's all I want you guys to write down for today. Make sure you bring this to class with you tomorrow, and we're going to glue it in your notebook.